Please subscribe my channel. I never imagined that one simple sentence could destroy a man so thoroughly. No yelling, no insults, no screaming or anger. Just one thoughtless remark that escaped my lips during a fight I thought we would get past. My husband didn't shout back. He didn't storm out of the house. He just grew silent. And that silence has haunted me for months like a constant shadow I can't shake. My name is Sarah. I'm 36 years old, and I've been married to Michael for 11 years. We met in our 20s when life still seemed full of possibilities instead of closed doors. Michael was reliable, kind, and the type of person who quietly fixed problems without making a big deal about it. He wasn't showy or loud, but he was steady in a way that always made me feel secure. The distance didn't begin with that fight. It sneaked in gradually, hidden behind tiredness and daily routines. Michael worked long hours leading a shipping team, while I managed a busy job in advertising. Our evenings grew quiet. Talks turned into quick updates about schedules. We still slept in the same bed, but it felt more like occupying the same space than truly connecting. I noticed first that he stopped reaching for me. When I asked about his day, his replies grew shorter. His smiles became rare. I convinced myself it was just stress and that every marriage has dry periods. What I wouldn't admit was how unseen I was beginning to feel, how his quietness made me nervous, and how I took his pulling away as personal rejection rather than simple exhaustion. The fight happened on a Tuesday evening. Nothing big led to it. We were in the kitchen, and the smell of burned onions hung in the air because I had lost focus while cooking. Michael brought up a bill I had forgotten to pay. His voice wasn't harsh, just weary. I snapped that I wasn't his secretary. The words piled up fast after that. Years of little annoyances suddenly spilled out. Then he said something that hurt my pride. He told me he felt like he was never enough for me anymore. Like no matter how hard he tried, it didn't seem to make me happy. I felt attacked and defensive. Instead of stopping to listen, instead of hearing the pain in his words, I lashed out with the cruelest thing I could think of. I said maybe the reason he felt that way was because he had never been much of a man in the first place. The words hit harder than I expected. The kitchen fell completely silent. Michael didn't answer right away. He just stared at me. In that moment, I saw something disappear from his eyes, not rage, not pain, but something deeper and more final. He nodded once, then turned and left the room. That night, he slept on his side of the bed, facing away from me. The argument didn't continue. He didn't demand an apology. The next morning, he made coffee as usual, packed his lunch, and headed to work. He kissed my cheek out of habit, but it felt empty. I told myself I would say sorry properly later, but I didn't. Days turned into weeks. Michael became polite, but distant, almost like a stranger. He answered questions, took care of chores, paid bills, and fixed the dripping faucet. But he stopped really looking at me. When I talked, his gaze drifted past me. At night, he went to bed early or stayed up watching TV, always keeping a clear space between us. I tried little things at first, cooking his favorite dinners, slipping notes into his lunch, brushing his arm as he passed. He accepted it all without complaint, but without any warmth either. The lack of response hurt more than anger would have. One evening, after almost 2 months of this calm distance, I asked if we could talk. He looked at me, truly looked for the first time in a while, and for a second, I thought I saw the old Michael. Then his face went blank. He said, "There's nothing to talk about. You already told me what you really think of me." That was when real fear settled in my heart, not fear of a fight, but fear that I had broken something beyond repair. I lay awake that night, going over my words again and again, finally realizing that I hadn't just insulted him. I had attacked something deep inside him, and I didn't yet know how much it would cost us both. In the quiet days that followed, I started noticing tiny changes, how he moved carefully around me, how his voice stayed even, how the man I married had hidden behind a wall I didn't know how to reach, or if I even deserved to try. I understood how serious it was one night when I accidentally overheard Michael on the phone in the garage. I wasn't trying to listen. I was searching for extra batteries when I heard his voice through the half-open door. It was low and honest in a way I hadn't heard in a long time. He was speaking to his older brother, David. I don't know what I am to her anymore, Michael said. I thought I was her husband. Turns out I was just convenient. I froze. I wanted to walk away, but I stayed, guilt pressing hard on my chest. David must have said something comforting, because Michael sighed deeply. No, she didn't cheat. That would almost be easier. At least then there would be something clear to be mad about. This was different. She said it so casually, like she had believed it for a long time. That was when I truly understood. My words hadn't wounded him just because they were mean. They hurt because they confirmed a fear he had been carrying quietly for years. After that night, I stopped trying to fix things with small gestures. I stopped making his favorite foods or acting like everything was fine. Instead, one Sunday afternoon, I sat him down and apologized sincerely without making excuses. I told him I was wrong, that I had spoken out of anger and not truth, and that I regretted it more than anything I had ever said. He listened without cutting in. When I finished, he nodded politely, the way you do in a work meeting, and then said something that scared me more than any yelling could have. I believe you regret it. But regret doesn't erase the damage. You didn't just insult me, Sarah. You changed how I see myself when I'm with you. I asked what he meant. He looked at the floor for a long time before replying. I don't feel safe opening up to you anymore. If I let you in, I'm giving you a weapon you've already shown you'll use. That was the moment I realized love alone wouldn't fix us. Over the next few weeks, Michael suggested couples counseling, not as a last-ditch effort, but as a requirement. He said he needed to figure out if what was broken could be mended, or if we were only putting off the end. I agreed right away, even though part of me was afraid of what might come out when everything was said openly. Therapy was tougher than I thought, not because Michael blamed me, but because he didn't. He spoke calmly about how small he had felt for years, how my teasing about him being too gentle or not strong enough had added up over time, and how my comment that night wasn't random but the final straw. I had always seen myself as straightforward, maybe too direct. I hadn't realized how often I judged him against what I wanted instead of valuing who he really was. Weeks became months. Some days brought hope, others felt empty. Michael began looking at me again, but carefully, like someone nearing an animal that once bit him. He never raised his voice or accused me. His calm only made my guilt heavier. One evening after a draining session, Michael said he needed space, not a separate room or time apart, but emotional distance while he decided if he could ever fully trust me again. That night, lying next to him, I understood something hard but important. I couldn't force his healing. I couldn't demand forgiveness just because I was sorry. Trust, once shattered, doesn't return with words. It returns through steady actions, patience, and accepting the results. 3 months later, Michael sat across from me at the kitchen table, the same spot where it all fell apart. He told me he wasn't leaving, not yet. But if he stayed, it would be with new rules, clear boundaries, open honesty, and one firm condition. If you ever speak to me like that again, he said softly, I won't argue or explain. I'll just leave for good. I nodded through tears, knowing it wasn't a threat. It was him protecting himself. We're still married, not because everything magically healed, but because we chose to rebuild it step by step with pain and effort. Some days the distance remains. Other days he takes my hand again, and it feels real, not just routine. I learned something I wish I had known sooner. Words don't only release anger, they create reality. When you strike at the heart of who someone is, you don't just win a fight. You risk losing the person who trusted you enough to stay by your side. Michael looks at me now, not exactly like before, but maybe that's okay. Love after hurt isn't blind anymore. It's cautious. And if we make it, it won't be because I said the perfect things, but because I finally learned when silence, humility, and respect matter more than being right.